Broadcasting live from the teetotaling shores of Lake Toronto, it's the UnScene podcast. My name is Jeremy Friedman.
And I'm David Tobias.
And today we're speaking with BAFTA-winning screenwriter and producer and current television chair of the Writers Guild of Great Britain, Gail Renard.
Welcome back, listener. You're in for a great one today. But first, what's up?
Not too much. You know, I saw my my 3-year-old niece this weekend, and something she does when you walk in is immediately she'll tell you, like, I have a dress, I have a bow in my hair, things like that. Yeah. And it just got me thinking, like, why don't we do that as
adults do that?
Yeah.
But we kind of do, don't we? It's unstated, right? Well, it's called conspicuous consumption, right?
Sure. But
you see somebody's like, I've got a Patek. I've got that, right?
Yeah, but the unstatedness, I think, ruins it. I think we should have to walk in and be like, I have pants on. I have a shirt.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. At least you know where you stand with that other person, right? You at least know what they have.
And then also people can react to it. Like when my niece tells me I have a dress on, I'm like, well, you know, internally I'm like, yeah, of course you do. I can see that, you fucking idiot. But what I say is, oh, wow, that's so cool.
Yeah. Adults always, like, inner monologue insult kids.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
You fucking moron.
You got it.
Because they are.
Exactly.
Because it's part of what makes them so endearing and lovable, because they're fucking idiots. Well, what else is new? We had a big night out on Friday, didn't we? We had friend in town. We went out. We painted the town Toronto.
Yeah, we got some pizza.
There's really nothing better than 2 a.m. pizza. We didn't get kicked out of anywhere. That was a plus.
Yep.
It was a big old Toronto night out, and it seemed like the rain was breaking every time we made a dash from bar to bar. So the drinking gods were on our side.
Indeed they were. And, you know, today I believe the writing gods are on our side.
That's true. We've got a big-name guest. She's very, very successful and acclaimed, and she's won a big-time award, BAFTA, these things are called. I've never heard of it.
Yeah, and she's got a great accent, too, which I think adds a little more flavor to our podcast.
Sure, yeah, we'll all and sundry. So, yes, we do have a great episode today, but why don't we refresh our listeners' memories? What is this podcast? What is the UnScene podcast?
Right. Well, if my memory is freshed, I believe it's a podcast where we talk to writers, producers, all sorts of creative people about their best unmade or unmakeable film and TV show ideas.
Yeah, it's a podcast about those unmade or unmakeable film and TV ideas, the best of the best, the ones that you'll never hear. You'll hear them here. We'll actually talk to the creatives who made them. We'll unpack their ideas, and then we'll perform an exclusive scene read from their script or from something that Jeremy and I banged out in an adrenochrome fugue.
Which is the case for today's episode.
Yeah, who do we have? Well, we've already told you, Gail Renard. Gail is a London-based screenwriter who's written on all kinds of things for the little screen, for BBC, ITV, C4, comedy, children's series, also books, films, stage plays. She's really prolific. She's really, renowned, and her credits include things like Monty & Co., one of her latest series, A Deeper Cut, Custer's Last Stand-Up, The Famous Five. You should really just go check out her IMDb profile.
Yeah, Gail's had a really remarkable career, and she's got some great stories. And thankfully, she agreed to come on our podcast and tell them, and also do the premise of our podcast, which is, of course, talking about a great unmade or unmakeable idea.
And without spoiling the idea, Gail did have a great unmade idea. It is a couple decades old, and it's something she never made, but we really enjoyed the idea. It's about and it stars a family of famous actors.
Yeah, and, we also spoke about the challenges that writers face when working with demanding talent and producers. And then at the end of the episode, of course, we read a scene from that idea. Now, unfortunately, Gail couldn't find any script pages for that idea, so David and I went ahead and we
ghost wrote for a BAFTA-winning writer.
Exactly, and it all turned out perfectly.
Yeah, so get ready, strap in, do your thing, but first, a word from today's sponsor, who is not really a sponsor.
For a limited time only, Microsoft is offering unlimited rows and columns in every new blank Excel document purchased this year. Just think of what you could do with all those rows and columns. How many numbers you could put in that shit.
It's all part of Microsoft founder and public health meme Bill Gates' commitment to the Giving Pledge, a bullshit PR stunt designed to trick gullible plebs into thinking billionaires are great.
Don't miss out on his generosity. Sign up for your free Excel rows and columns today at www.com/micro and use the promo code to get 100% off your next 100.
And now, on to the interview. Gail Renard, hello. Welcome to the UnScene podcast.
Well, glad to be here. I like what you've done with the place. Looks very nice.
Nothing fancier than a free Google room. Thanks for joining us, by the way. It's great to see you again.
Oh, thank you very much.
And Jeremy, good to see you. We're doing this recording virtually from 2 continents. And it's great to see you as always, Gail. So why don't we launch right into it? I mean, this is a podcast where we talk to writers and other creatives about their best unmade and unmakeable film and TV ideas, but actually many of your ideas have been made and made to great success. So maybe just to set the table for the rest of the conversation, can you tell us a bit about your path into writing and some of the major projects you've worked on in your career?
Well, I started writing professionally, luckily, when I was 16. I grew up in Canada, but I live in London, England, and have been here most of my life. And when I was 16, there was a CBC radio comedy show called, what was it called? Funny you should say that. And I sold them some sketches, and they didn't realize that I was a 16-year-old until they met me. And it was just very lucky. They were very, very nice. And the first person to perform my sketch was Jonathan Winters. And so, who was my dad's favorite comic. So that helped smooth things over. And they paid well, at least to a 16-year-old. And that got me started. After I graduated, I moved to London, and I'm a comedy writer and a children's writer. Done a lot of television, sitcoms, sketch shows, a lot of children's series. I always say in Britain, I could have written War and Peace, and the first thing everyone knows when they say, "What have you written?" I say, "The Chuckle Brothers," and they go, "Ah," because the Chuckle Brothers, and sadly one of them died a couple of years ago, but Paul is still going and a good friend. But they had a BBC children's show that ran for 22 years. And they're national treasures. So they're more important than War and Peace. I also wrote a book about my teenage experiences with John Lennon at the Bed-In, where we became friends. He took me under his wing, called Give Me a Chance. And I'm writing another follow-up to that as we speak, because there's one more story to tell. And now here we are.
It really is an amazing, amazing story. We will direct listeners or our listener to your book in our show notes. We'll make sure that folks go and check that out, because it really is an amazing, amazing story. Also funny to me that you got your start as a child laborer on our national broadcaster. That's amazing to me.
Well, I got my start before that acting on CBC from the time I was about 11 years old. Things like Crown Court basically it was wherever I could get a gig. I just wanted to be there. And I got the occasional gig. I played Runaways. I could be difficult. So it was great.
We'll have our research team dig up the footage and we'll put it on our Instagram. I'm lying. Our research team is us, and we will not be able to find that.
I didn't even know that you'd acted, Gail. That's a revelation to me.
I'm still acting. I do the occasional. There's a thin line between acting and performing, because remember when I came here to London, I joined in a sort of post-Cambridge Footlights group with Douglas Adams of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy fame, and we performed in theatres and things like that around, and we were so good. The last theatre we did had been a famous theatre for 100 years, and we closed it down.
There was no topping you, is what you're saying.
I just think it takes remarkable talent, but there's probably a good reason, which I found the scripts recently, the sketches we wrote, and suddenly it became clear they were terrible. So it's hopefully you learn as you go along.
Yeah, it can be hard to look back at your old writing, which is maybe a flaw in the premise of this show, but hopefully not. And that's you've had an incredible career, and now you've reached the pinnacle of it, being on this podcast, the UnScene podcast.
Yes.
You're welcome.
Yeah, you're welcome. Congratulations, and you're welcome. But now that you're here, we want to hear about an idea that you've had that you loved for whatever reason, but also couldn't make for whatever reason. So let's get into it. David, are you ready?
Let's do it. I'm more than ready.
All right.
Can I just preface this with a tip for writers? There's no such thing as a bad or unsaleable idea. There are certain ideas that you file away for months or sometimes years. You file it very carefully in the waste paper bin or in a bottom drawer. You take it out, you look at it afresh, and very often you go, now I see what the problem was. You always rename it, so no title shows up in the system when you send it out again. And, so I like to think it's recycling. But I won't say which show it was, but I sold a pilot and then a series to the same company twice. And that's one of the things I'm proudest of. And also projects get divided into, although whether you're a gun for hire or whether sometimes you just want to do your own things. But when I was a gun for hire, I was approached. I did a lot of work when I started at ATV here at Elstree, which was owned by Lord Grade, who is a mammoth in Britain. But I was approached. There's a famous acting family whom I won't mention their names because I'm still close to one of them, and I don't know how much it would be appreciated. But we knew this acting family. It was father, mother, 2 daughters and a son, and already I'm saying too much. And the studio said to me and my director friend, whom we often did series together, would you like to do a pilot? We think there's a series in this family. And we went, yes, of course there is. You say yes to anything. No, you don't. But we thought, okay, that's an idea. And they lived in this rickety old house, and they're lovely. The lovely, lovely family. And I wrote the pilot, and I must have thought it was funny at the time. Mercifully, no copy exists anymore. I haven't checked the National Archives. And normally we were pretty good at getting pilots made, and there was sort of a delay, and then we heard back, and the response was, this seems awfully incestuous. And we thought, okay, maybe this one won't get made.
Fair enough. Yeah, let's not say that it's unmakeable. It just hasn't been made yet, right? There's still time.
How did you interpret that comment that it's too incestuous? What does that mean?
Well, I looked up the word incestuous, and then I went, how very dare you? To this day, I have no idea, and probably did not want to know.
But you swear that had nothing to do with what you'd actually written in the pilot?
They just thought it was too much of one family. But since they asked me to write a show about the one family, we could be here all day figuring that one out.
Did you relay that note back to the family that they came off as incestuous?
No.
Probably smart.
I have stayed in contact with one of them, and we have discussed it, many years later, in a whimsical, joking way. And maybe one day, when I feel secure enough after therapy, I can mention the word incestuous.
That was a producer note or a network studio note?
Good question. I suppose it would have come from the head of scripts, because it was a studio system. So I don't think it was from Lord Grade. Lord Grade had better notes, but I'm sure they were right. To be honest, I don't think the world missed anything out with that series. I have to be honest.
You say mercifully no copy exists, but do you remember anything about the premise and what you'd written?
No. Like I said, it took years to wipe it from my mind. They all did. There was a big family house in the country. If I think about it now, there were probably shades of Noel Coward. Hello, darling. Hello, darling. Hello, darling. But they were very. Look, let's put it this way: they were a theatrical family, so it wasn't going to be Archie and Edith Bunker. It wasn't going to be the Connor family. Uh, they were theatricals. And also looking at it now, they would have been concerned about getting their next acting jobs, and the public probably really doesn't care. It's sad, it hurts, but you've got to be careful about what people are going to identify with. And now, with years and a little more experience or wisdom, you go, this was never going to run.
Do you remember if the plot line was about sort of their hijinks as actors, or was it more sort of just about an everyday family who happened to be these theatrical acting types?
They were not every day. They were not every day. I mean, but no theatrical family is, because you might be sitting around a dinner table and you end up with four-part harmony. Actors will act. And I know I went to visit their house and spent some time with them. I was also very close with another one of the children who's no longer with us now, sadly. And they were very, very well known. So it was just trying to see how the family worked. And the answer is theatrically.
That's really interesting. It makes me want to ask, you worked closely with this family in writing the script, or did they give you that kind of writerly disconnect, or how was that process?
Again, they were wonderful, but it would have been lovely, darling, looking forward to the script. It wouldn't, unlike, which I can tell you later, this is different from working with comics or actors who do get involved. And that's another side of the coin, which can be brilliant or it can be not brilliant.
That's definitely a whole other side to this conversation that we will get to. I want to ask now, though, just again to provide context to listeners, roughly what time was this? This is in the 90s, the 80s, the 2000s?
When I was at the very start of my career here, in my very early 20s, so last week. So it would have been sometime in the 80s.
Yeah, I asked because I'm curious at what stage in your career you were when you came to this project.
It was, I had some series under my belt, because I was very, very lucky that when I came here, she said name dropping, I was helped by the Monty Python group. They gave me introductions and just showed me the way, that person might be interesting in that person. But I'd written there was a series here called the Doctor in the House series, which was a very famous ITV comedy series here. Originally, it was a book by Richard Gordon, which was a huge hit in the 1950s about the NHS and young student doctors. Then it became a film with Dirk Bogarde. It was one of the rank films, rank being the name of the studio, not a description of the film, because it was a classic. And then they started making a series, and I jumped in on that, and was very lucky that at 20 I was writing for one of the number one sitcoms here. So I had experience, but let's put it this way: hopefully, I got better with time.
And so they came to you to write this idea?
Yeah, it was bliss being at ATV, because it really was the old studio system where they had their producers and directors under contract. And as a writer, you went from project to project because you were in the building. And it used to be you got your work in the studio canteen or bar. Not that I hung around the bar, but they were connected. So you'd be doing your series, and then they'd say, do you know what you want to do when you're finished this one? And it really was that easy that you could sell a series and I know I'm going to make you guys cry, that you could do a one-page treatment and they would say, okay, let's see a script. And they'd commission you for the script. And then if they liked it, they slotted in the next 6 or whatever. It was not that I'm comparing myself in any way, but it was the same studio. Lord Grade made The Prisoner and all those series. And The Prisoner with Patrick McGowan, he just went in and said, I want to do the series about the spy who wasn't a spy and wakes up and finds himself in the village. And Lord Grade said, I don't understand a thing you've said to me, but go make it. They trusted you. And because if you didn't produce the goods, you wouldn't have been there anymore. So I assume that somebody, it might have been the director, who got to talking with the script department, and they said, well, this sounds like it might be interesting. We'll commission Gail to write the pilot. And the rest isn't history.
Things certainly have changed. I mean, we don't have anything resembling that system in Canada anymore. I don't think it's as easy as walking into the canteen and getting work. I'm just thankful when I go to places like CBC and E1 and other broadcasters that they don't call security on me.
Yeah, it doesn't work like that here anymore. It really doesn't.
Well, I mean, it's maybe more open now. I mean, this is kind of a trite observation. That's not mine, but there are fewer gatekeepers because of things like YouTube and other platforms, even though that sort of centralized studio system's kind of withered away. There's other ways to get your voice out there. In fact, it's probably easier to get your work in front of a bigger audience now than it's ever been. Like this podcast, for instance, and our now 3 listeners.
Wow, you didn't tell me there were that many. But I agree, because it's far easier. If you have a phone, you can make yourself a comedy sketch. You can film scenes. You know this, and all the rest. And there's self-publishing, not vanity publishing, but proper self-publishing, Kindle and all the rest. So what's great is you can take control of your career now. But it was great that within ATV I got to do a lot, including writing for some very good comics, or good comedians, or then I'd go and do a children's series and a sketch show. So I had about my first 16 years there. So that was that's a great way to, it's a great way to cut your teeth.
Absolutely. Maybe that's a good place to get into what it's like to work with a whole panoply of comics and actors and other talents as a writer. I mean, you just told us that you had this opportunity in this like studio carousel of working with different people. It sounds like the family that you'd written your unmade idea for was fairly sort of, in the back seat, which I think as a writer would be the preference, but maybe you can tell us a little bit about your experience working for that broader range of actors and comics, and hint, we kind of want to hear about the most difficult ones.
Well, I will have to say first, I've worked with a lot of great people, and I can actually say from every series I've ever done, I have friends from each series. So either that or I owe them money. We do still keep in contact, and it's really, and that's what you aim for, because a series should be a family. Because when you start a series, you look at these people and sometimes say it, that if this goes well, we might be together for months or years. So we better make each other our best friends as quickly as possible. And normally it works. And then there are the others. There's some notorious actors. My favorite was one of my friends is a major drama writer who does a lot of the big British drama series. And he was working with someone who calls himself an actor, who is very beloved by the public. And the first day of read-through, they were sitting around the table, and my friend noticed the character's name was different. The star's name was... And he inquired, as you would, why is this name changed? I wanted to name him after my father. So there, for the rest of the series, my friend referred to the character as Dad, which was lost on this guy. But that was the nicest he ever was. I had one very, very, again from ATV, he was a very famous comic toward the very end of his career. And I killed him off, but we'll gloss over that. But he was the sweetest man, and I learned a lot from him. But I also noticed, as we were doing the pilot, he would make suggestions which was fine because as a comedy star, he's entitled. And every suggestion, I realized, was taking any laugh line away from another character and giving it to him until he ended up with every single laugh line and the others were just playing straight, which was interesting but every comic is insecure because as I was taught, that if you have a comic at the top of their career, there's only one way to go. So that breeds insecurity amongst comedians. So this comic was lovely, but I realized what he was doing all the more so when he asked me if I wanted to play one of the parts. And I remember thinking, you really do want to surround yourself with crap, don't you? But he literally, sadly, died before we filmed. And then it was given to another major comedy star. And we had the script reading and all the rest. And he died.
Oh my goodness.
And for some reason, no other comic wanted to do it.
I'll do it. I mean, if it's still open.
Oh, no, David. Be careful.
So that was another unmade script. One of my very famous favorites was, I will name names, who was, have you ever heard, it was mainly in the 50s and 60s, though he died recently, a British comic called Norman Wisdom. He was the British Jerry Lewis. And he was brilliant. He was most beloved. He did a lot of comedy films in the 50s and 60s in Britain. If you get a chance, see the film Trouble in Store. And he was always known, his boss would always be called Mr. Dinsdale, and you'd always hear him going, Mr. Dinsdale! But he did it better. And a friend of mine was writing a telly series for him. And again, with a comedy star, you have to feed the beast. And my friend went out to the loo for 2 seconds during read-through, and he came back and saw someone had written on his script. And he thought, this is odd. And he realized that for just 1/3 of the page, Norman Wisdom hadn't had a line. And what was scribbled on his script was, "Where's Norman?" And you go, love it. It's also reminds me of there was Coronation Street, which has been only running for 60 years, and in the early days there was Uncle Albert Tatlock.
Sorry to interrupt, but there's a Paul McCartney song also called Uncle Albert. Is that song named after the Coronation Street character?
No, it is because Uncle Albert was the every uncle from Coronation Street. He was very early Coronation Street, was a veteran of the First World War, wore his medals, and would have a rum. I'll have a rum. And my friend was a new writer on Coronation Street, and after filming, the actors were having studio bars are a common theme. They were all having a drink together, and it was the next day was still his script, and he asked the Uncle Albert actor, would you like a drink? And he said, no, I have to go home and learn my line. And he's a very good drama writer now. But you learn from that because you have to service all your actors. You can't leave somebody standing like a lemon. And in this case, in The Rover's Return, everyone has to be doing something all the time. It's my thing about characters are like trains that run on lines, and they're usually parallel. And sometimes they cross, sometimes they crash, sometimes they divide. But every character has to want something badly all the time, no matter how small. So you don't give Uncle Albert one line. The other thing, I did have my own version of hacks, but in real life. And it was again, while at ATV, there was a woman comedian. And being a woman, they asked me if I could write some material for her. And I was, and still am, feminist and all the rest. I'm not going to do, so I wrote what I thought was some great cutting edge material for a woman. And she read it and she threw it back at me and said, I want more boob jokes. And I didn't stay on the series. I walked out indignantly. Or just whichever. But now I realize it's, had I been clever, I would have got Gene Smart and done a series about it.
It's interesting, though, as a writer, like it's really a tightrope you have to walk between getting your own story that you want in the script, and then satisfying the demands from the talent and also the demands from the network or the higher ups. Have there been like any other crazy demands you've gotten offhand?
Oh, well, again, most of these were early on in my career, because now I only write what I want. It sounds very grand, but I only write my own material. And it's I can recommend, if you write the script first, you don't get paid up front, but one can say, this is the script. I mean, obviously it's open. I'll always make changes. Nothing's written in stone. It can always be improved, but you see what I want to do here. So if I'm selling you a green script, don't be surprised and say I wanted it in red. It's that sort of thing. But there was one young producer, and I'd written a script, and we had a meeting, and she really liked it, and it was a comedy script, and she said, it's really, really good, but can you add a talking animal? And there was this pause, and I was saying, excuse me, and she said, can you add a talking animal? And I thought, no, I can't add a talking animal. It's a sitcom. You wouldn't add I'm not comparing myself, but say to Larry David, would you put a talking animal?
Yeah, I didn't think there was any way to improve Seinfeld, but maybe that actually.
Yeah, could work. I'd like to think that's her note for anything she reads. Like, it could be a Holocaust drama, and she'll be like, I like
Schindler's
it,
List.
but could it have a talking animal?
I learned earlier on who not to work with, and the talking animal thing was a giveaway. But a friend of mine had a meeting over a different series, and you'll never guess what the note was.
But it's any animal, right? Just any talking animal will check that box.
I didn't get that far. Maybe she bought the rights to Mr. Ed. Maybe when he went out to pasture, she bought him. She obviously had a talking animal. I should have, nowadays, I would have questioned her further. Is there a specific talking animal you have in mind? Do you have him under contract? Is this a sweetheart deal? You've got to ask the questions.
It's especially tough, I think, for younger writers to ask those questions, but also push back or maybe even sort of draw lines and walk away when you've hustled so hard just for that first, crack at the piñata, and you're there, and all of a sudden some actor or producer is trying to completely upend or corrupt or bastardize your idea. What kind of advice would you give to younger emerging writers when they're in those situations?
It's very difficult because, again, I'm open to all sorts of notes, and I've worked with some great producers. And, when I'd get the note, I have this routine about getting notes. When I first see them, I read them and go, how very dare you? Do you know who I am? And usually they do. And I always go out and take a walk. And 2 hours later, I will look at the notes. And 99% of the time, I'll go, that's good. And it makes your script better. I had a producer, I used to love getting her notes because she made it better. And it was what I call the grace notes. God is in the detail. And those little grace notes can lift a script. So I'll always listen. But if somebody is very, very difficult from the start, they're usually not, unless they're in a lot of pain and bleeding while they're speaking, they're probably not going to improve 6 months down the line. I had one producer in development who drove me, and she was a young development woman, and she drove me crazy. And when I got a note about, can you add a comma here?
That Oxford comma.
Yeah, my answer was, I think you have enough commas. What can you say? I'm condensing a long career into the nightmare things. I've had many joyful times. I mean, the Chuckle Brothers taught me the trick of how to whip a tablecloth away from a table filled with china.
Oh, wow.
I mean...
Can you still do that?
When I come round to your house, I will.
That's one of those moves I've always been impressed by.
I mean, I know how to do it, and I did it in studio. I would not do it anywhere else where I could be sued. Uh, but it's interesting. It is pure physics or gravity or comedy. Uh, one learns so much from good people.
I don't want to blow past this tablecloth thing too much. Is there a trick to it, or is it just sort of practice?
No, there's a trick. You have to grasp the tablecloth at a certain point on the table, and then there's a specific point of gravity, and then you have to whisk it away very quickly with total confidence.
Like all things in life, it requires practice, and that makes me laugh, just the idea of someone practicing and failing that the first 100 times and then finally getting it right after having smashed through 100 different crystal sets.
Feel free.
Speaking of making perfect, maybe now we should pivot to a little scene that we've written, Gail, inspired by your unmade idea about the acting family and also kind of around the theme of working with difficult or demanding talent or other folks on a project. Would you do us the honor of reading it with us?
I would be honored. Thank you.
So just to kind of set this up, I'm going to be reading the stage directions as always. I'm also going to be reading the part of Evelyn, who is the matriarch of this acting family, and I'll be reading the part of Francis Ford Focus, who is the director in this scene. Jeremy, do you want to introduce who you'll be reading for?
Sure. I will be reading for Jack, who is the patriarch of the acting family, as well as Emily and Archie, two of the children, and a little surprise character at the end that I won't spoil yet.
Great. And Gail will be reading for the part of Nora Wolfe, who is a writer, a young writer, and as we'll all see, is trying to court this family of actors into a new role. So without further ado, why don't we start? And this is a scene called Raisin the Curtins. Interior, Curtin family home, evening. Ding dong, the doorbell rings. Jack Curtin, patriarch of the famous Curtin acting family, calls his son, daughter, wife, and toddler over to the front door.
Places, everyone, and be on your very best behavior for our guests.
Ding dong! Jack opens the door to director Francis Ford Focus and writer Nora Wolfe, here to court the family into starring roles in an upcoming big-budget movie.
Nora, Francis, welcome to our home. Meet my handsome son Archie, sexy daughter Emily, sturdy wife Evelyn, and rented toddler Dip.
Hello, Jack. Great to see you and the family again. And this time, thankfully, with a witness.
So lovely to meet all of you. Though I must admit, after watching your amazing films over the years, I feel like we've already met.
You should see our private films.
Jack, you can fire up the projector later, but dinner's waiting now. Come into the dining room, everyone. Everyone moves to the dining room and sits for a lavish meal.
Wow, Evelyn, this looks fantastic. You shouldn't have.
Oh, I didn't. The PA ran out for it.
Before we dig in, Emily, why don't you say a quick and dirty grace?
Okay. Thank you to the Academy.
Amen.
So, Nora, I read your script. In fact, we all read it together last night in bed.
We were laughing.
We were crying.
All sorts of fluids were exchanged.
Well, I'm glad you liked it.
Oh, we loved it. A brilliant new take on an old classic.
And we'd love to make it together. With you and Francis Ford Focus. It'd be quite the romp.
Oh, fabulous news, Jack. Can I let the studio know you're in?
Well, there was one thing before we commit. I don't know. It's so silly. I'm embarrassed even bringing it up.
No, tell me. I'm sure it's nothing to be embarrassed about.
We were just thinking that it could use a little more romance.
Specifically, kissing.
What did you have in mind?
Well, on page 127, when Dorothy finally meets the Wizard of Oz in the reveal scene, we thought it'd be wonderful for everyone to kiss.
A big, wet family group kiss.
With tongue.
Wouldn't that be great, Nora?
Beat as Nora gives Francis a shocked, helpless look. Nora, do you love her idea?
'Cause we love it.
Well, I hadn't thought of having Dorothy, the wizard, the Wicked Witch, the Scarecrow, Lion, and Tin Man all make out with each other.
Make out?
What? No. You have us all wrong. Nobody's making out.
It's just an innocent, wet family group kiss.
With tongue and grab ass.
Look, Jack, I love your idea, but The Wizard of Oz is a classic. We want to remake it fresh, but faithfully, and I don't think a family kiss scene's going to work.
What could be fresher and more faithful than a family making out?
I thought it wasn't making out.
Did I say making out? Well, you're the writer. You handle the words. So, Francis, do we have a deal?
Oh, yeah. Look, Jack, I don't think the studio's going to like this.
Because they're going to love it?
No, because what you're suggesting is illegal.
Whoa, nobody's suggesting anything.
We're insisting.
Maybe there is a way to bring more physicality to the scene. If we set it up earlier, earn the moment.
Hey, at least they're not asking for Toto to join the kiss. Actually, we thought you might give that role to our precious little Nepo. Come here, Nepo. Enter Nepo the talking dog, who turns to the camera and says,
I have a feeling we're not in Kansas anymore. Good boy. Who wants a kiss? Me.
And scene. Wow. Gail, that truly was the performance of my lifetime. And you guys are pretty good too.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, that was a lot of fun. Those acting masterclasses I've been taking have really helped.
You can maybe bring this script to one of those classes and perform it with some of your classmates there.
No, that was a lot of fun, and probably better than what I wrote originally.
I don't know about that. It's certainly less makeable than what you would have made originally. Gail, thanks so much for joining us today. It was an absolute pleasure to speak with you and hear about your experiences in the biz, and also to read a scene with you. It was a true delight.
I had a whale of a time. Thank you so much for asking me.
And that was Gail Renard. Wow, Jeremy, that was a pretty good interview, right? Was that not our greatest interview?
It was at least our Great Britanist interview.
Ooh, zing. Wow. And did you learn anything from this episode?
Oh, you know I did.
What did you learn?
I learned that if it's yellow, let it mellow, and if it's brown, wear it as a crown.
Wow. Aren't you going to ask me what I learned?
I am. David, what did you learn?
I don't know that I learned anything.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I don't know. What's a good lesson? What's a good lesson that everyone should know? You've got like
if
a 3-year-old
it's yellow,
niece.
let it mellow.
Well, that's your lesson. I need my own lesson.
Well,
Think.
I think that's kind of your own journey. You got to go on and see what you discover,
Ooh, I got one. What about if you believe in yourself, then nothing is possible?
That's a good one.
Okay, that's the lesson I learned. Yeah,
Wow.
Great.
And you know what else is great? This game. That's right. It's time for a brand new game to the UnScene podcast. It's called Hollywood Famo Fams. And in this game, I'm going to give you clues about a famous Hollywood family, and you're going to have to tell me who that family is.
Is it the Manson family?
No, unfortunately, no. But I do like a pre-guess. And in fact, guessing early will get you more points, because as each clue is given, you will get one less point.
You can still get people pregnant off pre-guess.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's get into this. You get how it's played. If you answer after the first clue, you get 3 points, second 2, third 1. The points mean nothing, so this explanation also means nothing.
Well, the points mean nothing to you, but last episode I went 5 for friggin' 5,
That's
so
true.
I was really amped up.
Well, so today's episode, there will be 3 families you'll have to guess for a possible total of 9 points. So let's see how you do. Here comes the first clue. In life, we all have to decide if we're a Rizzoli or Isles. But a third-generation actor from this family didn't when he was cast as Frankie Rizzoli in 2010.
Boy, I really don't know any Hollywood actor
Oh,
names.
then I'm afraid you're not going to get 9 out of 9 on this one.
Yeah.
But you could still get 8 out of 9, because here comes the second clue. What's the deal with punctuation? The patriarch of this acting clan appeared in 5 movies with exclamation points in their titles, and also 2 episodes of the TV show Seinfeld.
Shaquille O'Neal?
The Shaquille O'Neal family, I'm afraid, is incorrect.
Damn.
Wow. Things aren't looking as good for you this week as last week.
I'll bounce back.
But here's another clue, and this is the final clue for this first family. The French might say there's something nice about this second-generation actor, but it's his brother who's the bigger draw.
The Baldwins.
So close, but I'm
Les
afraid
Baudouin.
we were looking for the Bridges.
Oh, les Bridges.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
The French might say there's something nice, Beau.
Les Ponts.
But it's his brother who's the bigger drawbridge, you see? The other clues also made sense, but unfortunately you're 0 for 3 on that one.
Yeah.
So let's move to the second family. Here comes the first clue. Whether you think the patriarch of this famous family was the wrong man, the best man, or just one of 12 angry men, he started an acting legacy that would continue with the next 2 generations.
Oh, okay. Give me the next clue.
All right, next clue. In 2007, a second-generation actor appeared as Damian Blade in Wild Hogs and Mephistopheles in Ghost Rider. But perhaps both those roles were devilish allusions to an earlier role of his.
The Brolin family?
I'm afraid not. Let's move on to that third clue. The Simpsons. No, that's not the famous family I'm looking for. But the man who wrote that theme song did marry an actress from this one.
The Dreyfus family.
Ooh, so close but so far. Yeah, these clues are a little difficult. We were looking for the Fondas.
Never heard of them.
Never heard of them. Okay, well, that's I guess a problem. But let's hope you've heard of this third family, because here comes clue number 1. The Walton family owns Walmart, but the patriarch of this family's claim to fame was playing J.D. Pickett on The Waltons.
Yeah, pass.
Yeah, I wouldn't have known that one either. The clues get progressively easier, but maybe not. All right, clue
None
number
of
2.
these people are TikTok celebrities. That's why.
Yeah, I'm afraid that is.
I'm
a
just
problem.
too hyper online. I only know TikTok celebs.
Yeah, this one does require some pop culture knowledge, I suppose. Nicolas Cage hails from a famous family himself, and he can claim membership here too, as he spent 6 years married to an Academy Award-winning actress from this family.
Pass.
All right. And the final clue: while he doesn't have an Oscar like his sister, one member of this family did win a WCW World Heavyweight Championship
Oh, Will
belt.
Smith.
No. Oh, wow. You went from a perfect score last game to a perfect 0 this game because we were looking for the Arquettes.
Another family of nobodies that I ain't never heard of.
Fair enough. But what's also fair is that you scored 0. You absolutely failed.
Yeah, I did.
You should be ashamed of yourself.
Which I am.
But you should be happy with this episode that's coming to a close right now.
Wow, yeah, because we did well, I think, on this episode, didn't we?
we did.
We talked to Gail Renard. We had a good time. We read a nice scene. We played a little game. We learned some lessons. So thanks for joining us, as always, dear listener. We'll be back in a couple weeks with a brand spanking new episode, which we'll tell you about in just a second. But while you're here, why don't you do us the solid and check out some of Gail's work? You can watch her latest series, Monty & Co., on the BBC iPlayer. You can also pick up a copy of her book, Give Me a Chance, which is about her really amazing life-changing encounter with John Lennon. You can find that wherever fine books are sold. And lastly, can people dox Gail on the internets, Jeremy?
Of course they can, and they can do that by following her online on Twitter at Gail Renard.
Amazing. So it's been another great episode of the UnScene podcast, and we will catch you all next episode when we will be talking to improv legend Will Hines.
Oh, wow. That's exciting for me personally because, I do improv, and I, in fact, took a class once from Will Hines.
Wow. That's 2 out of our first 3 guests you have some kind of like improv path crossing with. Now, didn't you say in the Little Up that you once like harassed Little in a bathroom outside an improv class?
I think that's what I said.
I think so too. Well, people can go and play the tape back for themselves. Speaking of for themselves, people can go and find us on the internet for themselves. Where can they find us, Jeremy?
They can find us at the UnScene Pod, and that's on pretty much all the socials, all the ones that matter anyway.
Yes, indeed. You can find us all over the internet. And look, if you're feeling extra generous, maybe you can find us on the Patreon of the internet at www.patreon.com/unscenepod, where you can donate to enable our Imelda Marcos style luxury shoe addiction. Please do. We don't ask for much, only several $1,000s from each patron every single day. I think it's a reasonable offer.
Yeah. And look, we're not trying to put anyone out. We're not trying to send you to the poorhouse, but give us all your money.
Yeah. And of course, if you don't have that, then we do expect you to go out and rob someone for it.
Yeah. And while you're robbing them, tell them to listen to the UnScene podcast.
Exactly. This is how we do viral marketing. This is a multi-level marketing scheme that we're hatching here. We're like kind of like Andrew Tate, except we're not like horrible misogynistic assholes.
Exactly. But
in every other respect, we're buff. We're super rich. We live in Romania. What else does that guy do? That's about it.
Yeah, we harass Greta Thunberg on
Right,
Twitter,
yeah,
and
we get roasted by teenage girls.
Yeah. And the other thing we do is we get to the end of the episode, which is where we're at right now.